the quote, march to zero income taxes or make a tax policy change.
Okay, this fits in very well with my proposal, doesn't it? Yes, the governor and the legislature made a mistake by wanting to zero income tax over years and years and years, because all that happens is the first cut, when it went from 6.2 to 4.8%, you lost revenue, but it's still a high tax state. You didn't attract anybody into the state, so they did it very, very poorly. But at the end, yes, a zero income tax will attract people and businesses into the state, and provide more jobs and economic growth. So how do we get there? And the answer is what I said before. My proposal is get the state out of public education funding, so they don't need any income tax from anybody. We go to zero in one step. Local districts start collecting their own taxes through real estate taxes and sales taxes as they please, as each individual district wants, based on what the voters want. And that would be my solution. Yes, I do want to see income taxes zero for everybody. And with full decentralization, so the individual school districts raise their own money.
The last question for Senate District 21 will be for Dinah Sykes. State prohibition on local district and municipal weapons policies, caps on municipal spending authority, mandating local election changes to the fall partisan cycle, mandating high school curriculum, and restricting judicial branch authority. These are a few examples of the state legislative branch exerting its powers. As a legislator, how would you define appropriate separation of powers should Kansans be concerned about an imbalance of power?
I think I've got like 20 questions. I am a huge proponent for local control. Topeka hates it when DC turns around and tells them what to do, but yet they like to turn around and tell Lenexa and Overland Park what to do. Government closest to the people should be making the majority of the decisions, whether that's our city council and our mayor or our school board. We know how best to serve our citizens. Sorry. You know, all of this, the restricting of our justices, our Supreme Court, they're the experts. They're not out there just to say, hey, I want to put up a fight for someone. They're doing their job because you, the people of Kansas, said this isn't right, and we need someone to fight for us, for our schools. That's what they're doing. Local control, the tax lid, it sounds great. I have a house, and every year my property taxes have gone up, and I have to pay more. But putting a tax lid is not going to solve that problem. The tax lid is actually telling our local government, you can't prepare in the future because you're going to have a special election, and that's going to cost more money. What they are telling our mayor and city council is, go ahead and raise that property tax every year so that you are ready down the road for that disaster. That is not great government. We need the local authority to make the decisions that our communities need. Topeka needs to stay out of our business because I completely support our mayors and our city council. They know what they're doing, and that's why I have their endorsement. Thank you.
Ladies and candidates from Senate District 21, as a reminder, if you have an index card and you'd like, or you're thinking of a question, you can certainly write that question down now, and you can bring it up here at any point, because that session of the form will begin after these pre-selected questions are finished. So at any point you have a question, you can write it down, bring it up. You don't have to put your name on there. You're welcome to if you want, but it can be anonymous as well. All right, let's move on to House District 17. Two candidates are here in that race, and we'll start with Tom Cox. How would you like to see the development of a school finance formula proceed in the next legislative session? What is the role of the legislature and the role of the State Board of Education in this process?
Thank you. Collaboration, coordination, bipartisanship. That's where we start finding this solution. One of the major problems, and I kind of touched on it right in my starting speech, is that people are not working together. People are not willing to work together. We are not having the serious conversation, the serious debate about how we solve our education funding problem at all right now. And that's what we need to change. And what I realized is we can't change the minds of certain legislators like my opponent. We have to change them. We have to remove them from office and put in people who are willing to work together. I'm running as a Republican, but I say I'm a common sense Republican. I support good policy. I don't support parties. I support working together. I support how do I benefit my community, my constituents, and my state. And that always comes number one in any decision. So what we need to do is we need to start the conversation by getting legislators, representative from the governor's office, work with the State Board of Education, the local school boards, teachers. It is a collaborative effort. Not just one part of our group can figure out the answer to it. We all have to be a part of it because we all have different resources and experience and knowledge to know what the right solution is. So I will tell you right now that I want to be a part of that solution. I don't care who I have to work with to be a part of it. I'm going to sit down and say, what do you bring to the table? How can we help? But we have to be focused on what is the right long-term solution. And I think that's the most important part. How do we make sure that we're providing adequate and equal funding across the state? I want to make sure to take care of the Shawnee Mission School District because that's what I will represent and that's what's closest to my heart. But I at the same time do want to make sure that we are protecting all of schools in Kansas. So if we have one strong district and all the others are weak, it doesn't provide a strong state. And so you will see me up there working together with everyone, collaborating to find the right solution. And I think that's what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will be for Helen Stoll. Does Kansas have a revenue problem or a spending problem? Is state government too big? And how would you determine the, quote, right size of government?
Thank you. Well, if it's a spending problem, I'd like to hear from the incumbents about where they would like to cut, because I think we've cut to the bone. Our schools are running efficiently, it's been proven by studies, and I don't understand, we're borrowing heavily. We've swept money out of the Kansas Department of Transportation, I believe to the tune of $2 billion so far. They've also incurred $400 million in bonds. This excess borrowing has caused our credit rating as a state to be downgraded, which increases our costs overall. I would like, if you do run into an incumbent that supports this plan, please ask them where they would like to cut. We're missing our projections month after month on the revenue side. We've issued a $900 million certificate of indebtedness to allow us to limp into the next fiscal year and fund things at a basic level. We're selling assets to keep our school doors open. Yes, I think we have a revenue problem. My plan would reinstate the 330,000 entities that are currently paying zero tax. We also need to look at what happened when they compressed the 3 tax brackets. That's going to require a revision going back to what we had in 2011. It worked for us well then. We didn't have these issues then. I think to you all, if you think back, we didn't have crisis after crisis after crisis hitting the front page of the newspaper nationally. In conjunction with revising the tax policies, also I would like to see a reduction in the sales tax and reduction of the food sales tax, which will benefit all of us. Real quickly, my background, if I could, I'm also a product of Kansas Public Schools, Shawnee Mission North, and KU, got a degree in business administration. I was vice president of a couple of Kansas City banks doing commercial real estate loans, was a full-time parent for a long time, and now I work at Johnson County Community College. I help students navigate the college process and see how these issues impact them every day.
Thank you. Another reminder, write those questions down. We have a couple of questions. We want to get at least one question per race, so there's 6 races here, so at least 6 questions from the audience would be great as you're thinking about that. We'll move on to House District 18. There are 2 candidates from that race represented here, and we'll start with Eric Jenkins. What are the questions now? So if you don't run a question, I guess you can. Let's see. All right. Jenkins. Do school districts have excessive fund balances that would allow them to withstand reductions in state aid? should reserve funds be spent down to cover operational budget expenses?
Okay, thank you. Do school districts have excess fund balances? Some of them do have perhaps excessive school balances, but in some cases that might be a good thing. It depends on how you're looking at it. Should that allow for reduction in school aid? No, I don't think there should be any connection between those two. If the school system has been very frugal and done well with their funds, and they have a balance, that's a good thing, and they should be rewarded for that in as many ways as possible. Reserve funds should not necessarily just be automatically spent down to cover operational budget expenses. Why would you do that? I mean, I don't know why you would have to, but if you wish to, you would certainly have that latitude, and it's a local issue. It's the local school board that should be saying, yes, we want to spend this, or we want to do some capital improvements, or some modifications to the existing situation we have here. So we're going to spend some of that money, and they have the right to do so. I think that's great. I listened to all this about funding, and I went to the Kansas Association of School Boards presentations, and I'm listening to all this stuff about cutting schools and everything. And it's hard to believe when I'm sitting here looking at their information right in front of me that total number of certified non-certified staff has increased 15% since 1998. The ratio of students to staff has decreased over 10% since 1998 from 8 students per staff member to 7. Core support employees have increased at a much higher rate, 42%. From 1998 to 2015, the average principal and superintendent salaries increased 58% from $57,000 to $90,000 for principals and $78,000 to $124,000 for superintendents, whereas the average teacher salary increased 50% from $36,500 to $54,000. Ratio of direct educator students decreased from 11 students per employee to 9 students per employee. I mean, these numbers are pretty positive numbers, and I'm up here listening to how everything's falling apart. Well, that's from my training I got from the Kansas Association of School Boards, and it's not washing with what I'm hearing a lot of times. I think there's some issues that, a lot of issues that face us, and we obviously, education is one of the most important functions we have. 50% of our budget is spent on education. Well, 50% of our budget is going to education. And we do have a number of other things that we have to fulfill as state requirements as well.
Thank you. The next question is for Cindy Neighbor. School funding has been characterized as up, down, flat. So which is it? Can total per pupil spending be up while operational funding for instruction is down? Should cost of living and inflation be accounted in the way funding trends are conveyed to the public?
Thank you. School funding has actually gone down. Where you get higher numbers is when you combine capital outlay with your operating budget, and when you add in special funds for special needs children that can only be spent in that particular area. So when you take and you divide that out, that does look like a large number, but basically we are back in about the 2008 era with our funding, and at the current time, everything else is going up. Insurance goes up 15%. Your gas and lights and water, like at home, continue to go up. And all of those come out of the operating budget. So you can turn numbers any way that you want to, but common sense tells you that what we put into capital outlay, such as bricks and mortar, are not going into the classroom. They're not the teachers, they're not the supplies they need or anything of that nature. So what we need to do is understand that there are two parts to a budget. Look realistically at what is in operations. That's for our teachers, that's for our kids, and that's to operate on a daily basis. Capital outlay, again, is bricks and mortar. There's a special tax for that. So the answer is, it's down. It's up if you include everybody and everything else. But truly, we've not made any strides in the direction we should be going. Thank you.
We'll now move on to the race in House District 23. There are two candidates Do you support tax dollars for non-public schools through such means as vouchers or tax credit scholarships?
Thank you. I absolutely do not support using public funds for non-public schools, whether they be private schools, religious schools, or homeschools. Parents do have the right to choose where they send their children to school, but no public funds should be used for anything other than a public school, period. To do anything else subtracts money from our public schools, which, as we pretty well stated today, are underfunded already. I voted against, or I'm sorry, there was a bill in the legislature this year that I was very glad to see withdrawn from the House calendar. I believe it was AB 2457, which would have expanded and amended the tax credit scholarship program. And that bill was on the calendar for us to debate in the House one day, and they just passed over it. And that was a good thing. And the reason, it never came back up again. The reason it was withdrawn was House leadership knew that there was a lot of opposition to that bill. They also knew that moderate Republicans and/or Democrats were ready with all kinds of amendments on it. And so the fact that that was pulled was one of many education successes that I saw this year, the last 2 years, where bad education bills did not pass for one reason or another. And in that case, I want to thank you, the public, for speaking out loud and clear that you do not want public funds going for private schools. I heard from many, many constituents on that issue, and they were adamant about this. Thank you.
Still in House District 23, the next question will be for Amber Versola. The State Board of Education has begun their 7-year statutory obligation to review and revise the state education standards. Should they disregard all standards related to the Common Core? What is the legislature's role in determining the state education standards?
First of all, the Common Core, the state legislature does not determine education standards. The school board does. And the school boards know what they should expect of their local students. They know what the teachers can produce, and they know what they should aim for. And so I believe that the state needs to back up with this Common Core and really look at what it is and setting standards for our students. Using something that we can, it's a way to measure success in the school districts, whether it's through student achievement, showing, developing, it doesn't develop curriculum, it lets teachers develop curriculum. I think there's just miseducation about what Common Core is. And if we have legislators in there that understand Common Core, it's a lot easier than trying to get Topeka and lobbying against them, because we're already there fighting for you. So.
All right, the last race that we have for pre-selected questions will be the State Board of Education race. There are 2 candidates here for that, and a special State Board of Education bag. So, for you guys. All right. This first question will be for Chris Cindric. The State Board of Education has begun their, it's the same question, but has begun their 7-year statutory obligation to review and revise the state education standards. Should they disregard all standards related to the Common Core? What is the legislature's role in determining the state education standards?
I appreciate that question because there is a lot of misunderstanding about college and career ready standards. We are currently in year 6 of 7 with the standards, and there are some really very qualified groups of people that are revising and rewriting the standards. They, again, were written by the states and not the federal government to determine what kids need to know for life after, for different age levels and for post-high school and employment, what makes them more employable, what helps them succeed. So I appreciate that there are community leaders and businesses that are being involved in discussing the standards. I'm supportive of the standards. I wrote great IEPs using some of them for the students, and it helped when I had students who moved in and I knew what they were working on. So I appreciate that they're really focusing more on the social emotional standards, and I think we have nowhere to go but using high grade standards. I think that we're doing a great job with it, and I don't know if I answered that entire question, but I feel like I'm sort of repeating what Amber said, but I'm supportive and think the legislature needs to lead the issue with the State Board of Education. So thank you.
And the final question for this round, still with the State Board of Education race for Steve Roberts. How should the legislature and or State Board of Education help to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers and leaders? How should Kansas deal with its teacher shortage? What are the pros and cons of hiring non-licensed teachers?
There are many pros and cons for hiring unlicensed teachers. One of the misconceptions from advocating that you don't necessarily have to attend a college of education to be a great teacher is people hear that. People hear what they want to hear. It's probably the most important lesson I've learned in politics. Well, they're saying anybody can teach. No, not even close. So we began with opening the door for non-licensed teachers for technical subjects if those individuals had expertise in that area. We have a STEM license. So far, last time I checked, and this is data that's about a month old, we've had 9. Over the course of almost 2 years, we've had 9 individuals come from the STEM license, which would mean like an accountant to teach accounting, a chemist to teach chemistry, and so forth. And one of the things that I've advocated is who better to teach accounting than a CPA, provided that that CPA has natural gifts of communication and can connect with students. What we hear, though, is that, well, if you hire an unlicensed teacher, you're just flinging open the doors and you're saying anytime you come lately can just come swinging in the doors and anybody can teach. That's how it is spun. And that's a disservice to all of us. There are teacher shortages, and there have been for decades in those schools like I described, where it's 59% African American, 29% Latino. We've had these shortages for decades. We have now a vision on the state board, which I'm proud to say I was part of coming up with, to collaborate and develop. Kansas leads the world in the success of each student. We've reached 75%. How do we get that last 25%? That's a challenge we all need to collaborate on.
Thank you.
All right, so that ends the, making applause, yes, that's the end of the pre-selection round. We have several questions that have been sent up here. If you still have a question that you're thinking about, you're writing down currently, you can still walk it up or bring it over to Devin here on the side, and we can try to get it. You can't guarantee that every question that's been asked will be asked by the time we get to 11:30, but we still have plenty of time. How this round will work is a little bit different. We'll ask one question of each race, so the candidates in that race will answer the same question. We have some questions that are directed at a specific race, so I'll try to ask those for the people in that race. Others are not specified for a particular race, so I'll decide where to direct those. But let's go the opposite way. Since we ended with the State Board of Education in that round, we'll start with them. There are several questions directed specifically at those candidates. So again, both the candidates in that race will answer the same question. And there are multiple questions, but we'll see how many we can get to. I'll probably just ask you one now and then maybe come back later, okay? So the same Board of Education candidates, and we can just go in the same order, Ms. Cindric and then Mr. Roberts. Do you believe sex education should be opt-in or opt-out?
I personally believe sex education should be opt-out, but I believe that should be left to local school districts to decide. There are some very tiny school districts that may be able to handle the challenge of opt-in. We know the research for adequate and accurate sex education and health education, and the research is very compelling. Students need to have the most accurate information that they can have. Just from my own experience of working in large school districts, I know how difficult it can be for parents to find that form that comes home in the backpack that they need to sign to opt in, and I just think it's a challenge that a lot of school districts are going to have difficulty with. So I'm a proponent of opting out.
Mr. Roberts.
Well, Kansas is a local control state, has been for decades. The best example of that is textbooks, right? In states like California or Texas, the state board tells you what textbook you're going to use. I don't know that we've ever done that, and I don't see that we ever would. So we are a local control state. What I would like to see is a recognition that perhaps the curriculum on sex education in Lindsborg may be different from Lenexa. It may be different in Colby than it is in Kansas City, Kansas. Local control is a really strong element in our system. I don't really have a personal preference. I really don't. I've never had a life science course. I got through high school without biology. So as I was talking, I don't know the difference between meiosis and mitosis, Kevin. I just don't. So I'll leave that to the experts. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to House District 23. This is a question that was asked just generally, but over your race. And again, both candidates will answer the same question. Is CanCare, the privatized Medicaid system, is CanCare expansion a good idea?
Yes, it is. I'm a proponent of expanding CanCare, and I think it's a travesty that we aren't allowed to. I think it's a travesty that we aren't even allowed to have a discussion about expanding CanCare here in Kansas because of the House and Senate leadership, and the governor are so opposed to it. They won't even let us. In the legislature in the last 2 years, any bills that had any possibility of having an amendment brought on them that could expand Medicaid was not allowed to pass out of committee, or if it did, it went nowhere in the House and Senate because they wanted to squelch all possibility of looking at Medicaid expansion. And I think the pure and simple reasons they are afraid of that is it's tied to Obamacare. Well, the Affordable Care Act is the law of the land, and it's not going anywhere. And CanCare, expanding CanCare would provide 150,000 Kansans with health insurance. And these are the folks who currently fall in the gap between people who they make too much to qualify for Medicaid now, and they don't make enough to qualify, they make too little to qualify for subsidized health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. And expanding Medicaid would have economic development benefits across Kansas. It would benefit local hospitals. It would benefit hospitals right here in Johnson County who are providing millions of dollars in uncompensated care every year. And it would have ripple effects throughout the communities in Kansas. So absolutely, we need to have that discussion in the next session.
I also believe that the expansion of Medicare is a positive thing. CanCare is a positive thing in our state. I think that the refusal to expand Medicaid is one of the greatest moral failures of the Brownback administration. Now, PICA refuses to talk about the 150,000 people in our state who need medical care and lack it. Or need access to medical care, affordable medical care. And that conversation is not happening because we have a supermajority of one party in power in Topeka. If I were a Republican legislator, I would be at Brownback's door every day screaming, yelling, doing whatever I had to do to make sure this discussion was brought up, because these people do not have a voice in our legislature. They do not have the resources to get to Topeka often. They need to have somebody there advocating for them, fighting for them. And, the best measure of government is how it treats its people. Kansas is not treating its people so well right now through the failure of expanding Medicaid. And there are 150,000 people that are waiting for somebody to stand up and say something. We should have had a debate about this session. Why do we have to wait until next?
Thank you. For House District 18, for both candidates, what is your view on judicial selection and should it be changed? We'll start with Mr. Jenkins and then Ms. Hager.
My views on judicial selection are? My views on judicial selection is that I would like to see Kansas go to a model similar to the federal model. I think it's worked for the United States government since our inception, the way we select our Supreme Court justices, and we get approval on advisory consent by the legislative body in the United States, the Senate in this case. And I think that would be a good method for us to use. I think the method we have now maybe does have some flaws in it from the standpoint of we have lawyers selecting lawyers, and I'm not so sure that really includes all of us. I think we need to be more involved and be included in that process of who's sitting on our Supreme Court.
I like the system that we currently have. Our judges are in place because they interpret and do the rule of law as it is written. If any of us went to court, we have a 50-50 chance of winning our case. That's just the way it is. There's a winner and there's a loser. And just because our current government doesn't like what the judiciary branch has done, and by the way, we do have 3 branches of government, and the reason they're there is to make sure that that 3-legged stool is to watch over each unit, to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do by the law. We have some that like to usurp the law. Our current Attorney General thinks that that's okay. And some of other legislators, because they have not won certain cases, blame it on activist judges. Folks, you either win or you lose, but you should learn from it. And you should be willing to follow the law as is written, because legislators formulate that law, and we're not above the law. So I would stay with what we have. Thank you.
Thank you.